to rip it. Again, like the kind of the purpose of this conversation is one, you were the first person that came to mind of like somebody who I've watched go through several life changes, right? Like you and I haven't known each other that long, but in
Yeah.
that time, right, you've continued to grow your business. Then you got pregnant, which is a whole thing, and then you obviously gave birth to Smith, and now you're like transitioning back. And so part of this conversation, I really want to get to the bottom of like what mental, I guess, transitions did you have to go through? What, as things were happening internally for you and even external, like, did you watch your husband, start to have to make adjustments? Did you need different things? Because I look at a lot of podcasts and a lot of content out there, and obviously the hot topics now are everything that is like political. So everybody talks about everything political. I listen to Ed and Andy, of course, and I'm excited for the MFCEO project to come back. But the one thing that I always miss is specifics, right? Ed kind of does a good job of it sometimes when there's not ads on his podcast anymore.
Yeah.
And pay attention. Um,
Yeah.
but it's what are those real time elements versus you being so far removed from it and then having to look back. But like as you've gone in, like what are those things that are going through your mind physically, emotionally, if you're open to it, even hormonally, that you've had to try to like balance out because there's such big transitional shifts.
For
So,
sure. So many shifts. I mean,
right.
going from business over owner to mother is definitely the biggest shift of my life. I thought it would be, right? You go in anticipating that things were going to change, but I had no idea how drastically it would change. And really, the biggest thing was the routines and me having to switch my routine so much and not realizing that it would be so dependent on the baby, which it's to be expected that the
Yeah.
routines would change. But I was such a routine oriented person that when I had my baby, I figured, after a few weeks, I'd be able to get back to business as usual. And that was just not the case. It was really challenging in the beginning because that newborn stage is like its own world, right? It's like figuring out what he needs, keep him fed, all of that, all of that. So that was, the biggest first initial change. And then getting back to the routines, it was less about a sequence of things that had to be done in what time and more about making sure I got the big important things done during the day. So with the routines being a big hurdle, I felt that I learned that I created if then scenarios. So I would, have if he slept 2 hours for his nap, I would get X, Y, and Z done for the business stuff,
Awesome.
because I was trying to get back into like, okay, how am I gonna get all this work done and all of the things that are important, figuring out how he's gonna eat and nap and like just learning new things with the baby.
Yeah.
If then scenario thing was a game changer because I just would write in my notes on my phone. I would say, okay, if he woke up at 6 a.m., instead of working out at 6, I would, feed him and then work out 7 to 8.
Mhm.
And so it wasn't like, okay, my morning routine is X, Y, and Z like it always was. And it's
Mhm.
more about making sure the important things were handled. So to answer your question, the biggest hurdle for me was my routines because I was so driven by like a very routine schedule
Yeah.
pre-baby.
Yeah, and maybe stepping back, sorry, we jumped into this, but for those listening, Alicia runs a company called Brand Medics. She has run this for many years. How long have you been around now, Alicia?
8 years. I'm sorry, 6 years.
6 years.
Yeah.
So Alicia and I met about 2 to 3 years ago at this point, and so I'd already known her on her business journey. And she just recently, obviously, gave birth to a beautiful baby Smith, who's 9 months. Did I get that
It's
correct?
8 months.
Eight
8 months
months.
on Friday. Yeah.
Okay. And so, part of Alicia's story is Alicia has always been somebody who has been extremely motivated and driven. So that has always, at least since I've known you, been ingrained in you. So
Thank you.
picking up the journey from there, some of the routine stuff that you're talking about, did you notice a routine shift when you first got pregnant, when it was getting closer to the due date and you realized like, hey, this is coming no matter what, I have to shift, or did it only start once Smith was born?
nothing changed. When I was pregnant, I was like, okay, I am still, three buckets of my priorities were definitely my health and wellness, my business, and my family. And that really stayed consistent even now, but it's a matter of, figuring out what goes under those things
Yeah.
now. But my routine during pregnancy, I had a great pregnancy. So I stayed consistent with pretty much everything, business as usual. I guess toward the end, I took less meetings, I was doing less like, I wasn't packing boxes as much. Um, and yeah, so I guess my routine really shifted when I was like, okay, it's go time with giving birth, And even then I was like, all right, at 2 weeks I'll be back. And then as you know,
Yeah.
you have children, so you know that it's hard to explain to anybody until you go
Yeah.
through that. So
You definitely have to experience it for sure. It's
yeah,
hard. And it always
harder to
sounds
explain.
like if you're the person listening to it and you don't have children, you're kind of like, I get it, but it doesn't really sit in until you're just, nope, there
Yeah.
really isn't anything I can do. And even, Bree and I talk about it all the time on the weekends now. It's like I used to be able to work hard on the weekends and get stuff done. And I still obviously have my essential action list that I get done, but a lot of those things I have to wait until they're in bed because with three kids running around
Yeah.
the house, Bree trying to run her own business and keep up,
Yeah.
it ends up being a lot. So
Oh yeah.
for you, going back to your routines, let's talk about when it did start to shift and maybe when you were getting back into it. Were there certain elements or fixtures when you, as an example, when you played that if then or if and game,
Mhm.
which I really like. I've never heard that before, actually.
I kind of made it up. I wish
That's
I heard it
brilliant.
somewhere. Maybe it'd have more structure, but
Yeah. No, that's brilliant. I love that. So, how did you, I guess, number one, identify your big rocks? And then
Mhm.
two, as you were trying to shift your routine, was that part of you shifting your routine back to where you were or starting a completely new routine just because now you have this other priority in your life that you have to attend to?
Yeah, it was definitely a new routine. And going back to the less focused on, getting it less focused on the sequence of things for the routine and more focused on, okay, what has to happen
Yeah.
during the day today to make me feel like I'm moving forward in all those buckets. And in the beginning, it was like the bucket of new baby was huge. It was most of the priorities under that. And there was simply like making sure I drink water and taking my supplements and, for me. And then obviously to be the best for him. And then as he got older, then it was that bucket was still important, obviously, for making sure the family and he's healthy and all progressing. But then I started kind of including more business things in there and my fitness and family goals and things like that. But they were very like minimal things that were they were just small things so I knew that I could get them done because my day was just I would hate to say hijacked, but my day was kind of just taken over for the first few months by the new baby. So,
Yeah. And did you communicate things? So as you're shifting into this new routine, right? Let's talk about you and a family unit, you and your husband, and then Smith. Were you communicating differently to your husband? So he was also having to adjust slightly. Did you lead the charge on a lot of this? And the reason I'm asking, right, to put this in full context, is we're trying to use this as an example of there's a major life shift, right? You obviously gave birth, a baby into the new world is a massive change. If somebody's going for a career change, if somebody goes through a divorce or there's a death in the family, any sort of major transition, what we're trying to do is really figure out like how did you leverage number one, your resources, your drive, your motivation, your mentality, and then some of the tools and the processes that you put in place.
mhm. Yeah, I mean, you're the perfect person to talk to about this, but the Habitual Growth app for sure was a tool that I used even from the beginning. And that from the beginning, obviously with you, but then also going through the transition. And even if it was just like I said, drinking my water or something so small, like just having that structure of that tool and those essential actions helped me so much just get through some of those days. And it
Yeah.
really did help also with the transition into parenthood with my husband and I, because I would put on there like, okay, sometimes I would just for myself just be like, okay, well, you need to be a little bit more patient, even though you're sleep deprived, like something on there
Yeah.
about just making sure, we're going to get through this. And right now, my list has to have that on there because otherwise, it's things could
Yeah.
unravel quickly.
For sure. And I'm glad you're using it in that capacity because that is one thing that is really important, right? We naturally are always driven to do more, accomplish more, right? As people that use Habitual Growth app, as business owners, that's just kind of our inclination, right? We always want to move the needle forward. And I use it in similar capacities where I need to take a break. I need to put my phone down. I need to focus on Bree or the kids or
For
something
sure.
like that. And so I sometimes use it not to make progress, but actually to purposefully stop myself and recheck in and say, okay, these are the things that I'm really doing that are important for me. You mentioned even something as simple as like drinking water, right? The easy things that sometimes we forget and take for granted because there's just so much chaos happening. I'm really happy to hear that you were doing those types of things as well, and just force yourself to pause. Like it's not all about Alicia, it's about the family, it's about taking care of myself, loving my future self.
Yeah. And one thing about the app too, and that what you guys touch on a lot of is living with intent. And I know that kind of just gets thrown around a lot, but when you really think about what that means, it's doing all of those things with intent. And it's, the work, everyone can relate it to working out. If you're more present and more, you're just doing it more intentionally, you're going to have greater results. But that really is for all of the things that you put on that list. And that's another thing I love about the app that you guys have. It's not just business or just fitness, which a lot of them I feel like are more geared to. It's important to have a well-rounded, life. So it's put those things on that list have to be well-rounded also. But yeah, doing those things with intent is most of it instead of just putting it on there and like checking it off. Obviously, drinking water, it's pretty cut and dry, but like, being present with your kid isn't cut and dry. It's like, are you actually being present or are you just giving yourself an hour of not being on your phone, thinking about a million other things on your to-do list? So I think that point about living with intent is underrated and needs to be brought to the surface a little bit more.
I agree. Wholeheartedly. I want to pull on the drinking water thread because again, that is something that you do have to be intentional with. I don't care. Look, I drink two of these a day,
Same.
and listen,
Half
there
gallon.
you go. So if you're not purposeful about, as an example,
True.
when you do these things, right? It's 10 p.m. and you've like now you either have to chug a gallon of water or whatever.
Sure.
You don't prioritize things in the right way, I guess is the best way to say that. But
Yeah.
that said, you're drinking a gallon of water a day because you're now on 75 hard. You're 8 months post pregnant or post birth. So do you feel like, as an example, now that you've kind of got this new routine, you're back into 75 hard, you're driving your business again, you're being intentional with your actions and what you're prioritizing, how have you, I guess, transitioned into this period where you're picking up momentum? And then are there like maybe tips and tricks that you've found work for you that if and is an example thing, but like, are you doing that to a greater degree now, or are you slipping back into old routines that were working for you previously?
Yeah, and I think the first and foremost, I would say the one thing that shifted was my idea of success and what success looked like. So in that sense, I do feel like I'm gaining momentum, but I think I had to kind of preface that with understanding what my idea of success is because 2 years ago, it was different than it is now.
Yeah.
It was all business. It was all, we wanted to be this much business revenue, like all of these things that mattered, of course. And I needed to do that. I needed to work the 12 hours a day. I needed to put everything aside and focus on the business, and especially in those early years. And not saying it's not important, still it is, of course. But my idea of success now, or my realization of what a successful life looks like that I'm building or working toward every day has changed. So now I do feel like I'm gaining momentum because I'm focusing on the different buckets in that what will build that life, and it is more family oriented. It's more having the time and the freedom and I guess freedom is the biggest one, the freedom to be able to spend as much time or not with my family. And I didn't realize that that would be such a big point for me. I knew that I wanted to have my own business for a lot of reasons, but I didn't know why. And now it's a little bit more, it makes much more sense to me with having a family and a kid now. But tips, I would definitely say the if then. Or the, yeah, if then scenario. So I would make a list in my phone of all the things I would have to get done, usually when I'm like laying in bed before I go to sleep.
Mhm.
The important things that have to get done in different areas, like when am I going to work out tomorrow? Or what am I going to do for my workout tomorrow? And if it doesn't happen in the morning, when can it happen if he naps in the afternoon? So a lot of like the first thing would be writing all these important things that have to get done, and then just either mental notes or notes in your phone of, okay, if his nap gets cut short and I can't work out, can I pick it up later in the day? Especially being on 75 hard, that's really important to do. And I think being on 75 hard for anybody, it will teach you how to prioritize your day and how to have time management.
Yeah.
But everybody's going to have curveballs. Not everyone has an 8-month-old
Yeah.
curveball, but
Yep.
there are curveballs that happen throughout everybody's day. I'm not any different, but and it's a matter of not letting that derail you and instead just shifting and figuring out how you can fix it. And some days you're going to be like, oh, everything went according to plan. This is great. I can go to sleep at my normal time and sleep great. And then other times it's 7 o'clock at night for us because our bedtime's like 8 o'clock. It's 7 o'clock at night. I'm like, shoot, I still have to get a workout in, or I still have to work. I still have to read. And I try to remember how terrible those nights feel so I do better the next
That's good.
time.
That's good. Yeah. Do you, when you're writing those out the night before, do you mentally just put a note of like, hey, it's going to take me 45 minutes to work out? Or is it, do you actually write it down and you're like, hey, I have to write out this email or I have to reach out to these people. It's going to take 10, 15 minutes so I can stack four of those together really quickly if there's a big block.
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'll have like one note of just work stuff, and it's like, okay, if he works for or if he naps for an hour, I could definitely get two or three of these items done, and they're important, but they're too like mentally demanding for me to do when he's awake.
Yeah.
So, and we have a nanny that comes a few days a week, but for the days that she's not here and I have to like manage both, like I still have to work, but I still, he sleeps for a few hours a day, so
Yeah.
I manage to get a lot done still. But I've learned that I can't get a workout in typically when he naps
Yeah.
because there's too much left up to chance.
There's a
But
lot of variation in there,
yeah.
100%. It's like some days it'll be 3 hours and other days it'll be 20 minutes. And
Totally.
you
And then
never,
like 2 hours will go by. I'm like, well, I got all my work done and I could have also worked out, but I just
yeah.
never know. And you can't cut it short because then you have to start over. So
Yeah.
it's a whole thing. But yeah.
Has that led you to doing things like time blocking on your calendar? Or is that something you did before? And the reason I'm asking is I'm also doing 75 hard, as you know,
Mhm.
and I've used the Habitual Growth app now for 2 years, and I still find myself just being like, wow, I'm out of time. I got distracted. I didn't prioritize things in the right way. And so I now basically take my habitual growth list and I'm like, okay, these are the time blocks that I have. Right after this call, I'm going to go out for my outdoor workout, right? Because I have to get in the car and I have to go somewhere after that. But is that something that you found works for you? Is that something that you've done, or do you do something different?
Typically, before having a baby, I would always time block. I was like such a big, I was all for time blocking. But I think now, really the only thing I'll time block the big things. Like if I know something big will take an hour, or, you know, obviously the workouts, I do time block because I know that that's a specific amount of time that I need allotted for that. And I'll give myself like two or three, sometimes even four blocks of what hours throughout the day I could do it. It's like, okay, if I can't get it in the morning because he had a rough night or whatever, and I was up and I need to sleep more than 4 hours to function, I'll be able to do it at 3 p.m. when my husband comes home or something like that. So, and then I'll just mentally put, okay, 3 to 4, I could do that as long as, in his nap, I did X, Y, and Z of my important business items. So time blocking, I think, is really important. And I think you don't have to like time block your whole life and your whole day to make it to be successful at it. I think just figuring out the things that take a certain amount of time that will take that X amount of time, and just figuring out where you can fit it in the day. And it's surprising how if you just turn off your phone and turn off distractions, set a little timer that you can get that time block cube thing.
Yeah.
Uh, it just really helps you kind of move things along a little bit more.
I love that. That's great.
Yeah.
And then last question I'm going to ask you, because I know we're running up against time, but you
Yeah.
mentioned you go to bed early, which is totally fine, and probably should be the case. As you were transitioning into motherhood, did you find that sleep became that much more critical? Not only from a physical recovery standpoint, but also from a mental. And because I've found as I've transitioned in life, whether it's a career change, whether it's things are going right in the business or wrong in the business, the mental capacity, the anxiety that I feel internally, sometimes my body's just like, it's better spent going to bed. And then you get on the other side of the spectrum and you get people like Andy who are just like, you don't go to bed until it's done. Or you get a Jeff Bezos who is like, nope, I protect everything with my sleep and I get 8 hours because I know that's the time block that works for me. Where do you kind of fall on that spectrum? What works for you?
Yeah, well, you caught me in a good time because our son's sleeping now. But if you
Nice.
asked this a month ago, I wouldn't, it would be a totally different answer. But I think it's a gray area. I do think that obviously we need sleep. I think it's been proven 1,000 times over that in order to function optimally, you need sleep. If your health will decline, your mental capacity, everything will decline if you don't sleep. That being said, before I had my baby, I was big on sleep. I would sleep 8 hours, no problem, straight, have my aura ring be 95 plus. I'd always get the crowns. I was like optimal sleeper. And then with a newborn and young baby and sleep regressions and teething, when it gets to be like more than 5 nights in a row of sleeping less than 4 hours, you contemplate everything in your life, and
Yeah.
everything important gets to the back and to the back burner and the bottom of the list. Like nothing is important anymore
Yeah.
except like making sure I could drive safely, you know? So,
What decisions did I make? Is this the right one? What am I doing?
yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
I didn't realize how much it would affect my life until I was lacking sleep
Yeah.
for multiple nights in a row. There was probably like 2 or 3 weeks where it was just completely unbearable. And I knew he was upset too because he wasn't sleeping, and it made the whole dynamic of our days terrible. And the
Yeah.
napping, everything was just not going well. And I felt like I couldn't function in any of those areas. So, yeah, I would say not being on 75 hard, something I will take with me is okay, sometimes it is more important to just call it a night. You don't need to struggle and read the 10 pages. You can just go to sleep if you really need to. And that's where you have to like check in with
Yeah.
yourself and
Yeah.
not just have an excuse.
Yeah. I'll share this little joke, but you'll probably kill me for it. But when we were first before we this is before we even have kids. And I used to stay up all night working. Like it was just I'm not a great sleeper. So I get up early, I go to bed late. It's what my body used to be able to handle. I can't anymore, but it used to. And Bree
Yeah.
would always tell me, she was like, I have so much to do. And she did. She would just have a ton of stuff she was trying to juggle, whether it was, her professional job, starting a business, whatever. And 30 seconds later, I would look over and she was just passed out in bed, just completely knocked out. And she would do it, I'm probably exaggerating, 3 out of the 4 weeks of the month. And so I found this t-shirt online that says, I have so much to do, I'm just gonna go to bed. And I, I gave it to her for Christmas one year. But it was great. It was perfect.
You
Uh
know what though? I get where she's coming from with
yeah,
that. Because in her head, she's like, okay, but I have so much to do. I need to rest so I could do it tomorrow.
yeah.
And people are just wired different.
They are, and I will say, even from my own experience, because I'm going through this now, I actually complain to Brie a lot. I used to be able to, and I don't say this in a braggadocious way, but I used to stay up till 11 o'clock at night, 12 o'clock at night, and I would work because that's after the kids go down for bed. That's when I would catch up on stuff. I can't do that anymore. At
Mhm.
like 8:30, my brain just starts to shut off.
Totally.
And I've now, you were mentioning you changed routines. I'm actually getting up earlier in the mornings, which I never used to do. I would sleep till 6:30 whenever the kids got me up. Now
Mm,
I'm actually purposely getting up 5:30 and trying
mm,
to do things in the morning, especially with 75 hard, to alleviate the day and make sure like I actually have the energy to absorb and be intentful with those decisions because I would find I'm reading at night and I'm just falling asleep. I don't absorb anything, right? Or I'm writing an email and you're like, well, that sucks. Like I probably should have like postponed that until the morning when I had the energy and the
yeah,
clarity.
it would be done better. Yeah,
Yeah.
agreed.
Yeah. Yeah. So those were all my questions. I mean, anything else you want to share with the group, with me? Anything else that's coming to mind?
Man, no, but you had great questions. And let's see, I did take some notes, but oh, you know what? I would say one big tip, then I put this on my list every single Sunday, is to plan for the week. So like look at your week schedule. I mean, even I would do that before having Smith, but It's so important to just plan the week, meal prep for the week, just something. Like you don't have to, it doesn't have to be this whole big thing, but taking Sundays to get your physical stuff done with your meal prep and all of that, planning out your week with the big things that have to get done. Priorities, needs, and wants lists have been really important too. Like what absolutely has to get done this week, where can you pencil it in? We can go back to time blocking, where to fit it in, and then needs what's important, but like if it doesn't happen, it's not the end of the world, but you still want to get some of those done. And then wants are just like, if I have extra time and he sleeps 3 hours, what else could I chip away at? So Sundays are great too. That's one of my big tips.
I love that. That's so good. Well, it's been so much fun, Alicia. Thank you
Yeah,
for
it's
joining
great.
us. We're definitely going to do this again, and we're going to check in a couple of months, maybe around that 1 year mark to see if anything else has changed, how that routine is going again.
Sounds good to me. Thanks so much.
Awesome.
We are a community dedicated to growing people's lives one day, one action, and one thought at a time. And the big part of this is learning from others. So because of this, we've created a free Habitual Growth Facebook community where you can find interviews, additional resources, bonus content, and so much more support to help you along the way in your growth transformation. And the best part is it's all absolutely free at no cost to you. So if you're somebody who's wanting to make a change in your life, head over to the app or the Play Store and download the Habitual Growth app now for your free trial. It doesn't matter if you're an entrepreneur, a business owner, you work for somebody else, or you're just determined to make changes in your own life. These principles and this process work for everybody. For more information about Habitual Growth or any questions we can answer for you, shoot us an email at info@habitualgrowth.com. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you at the next video, and until then, keep inspiring others to do more.